Welcome to the Brass and Woodwind Shop. When you're done fixing an instrument, it is a good idea to play test it to see if it works like it is supposed to. It is especially important on flutes. This video will not show you everything about playing the flute, but I will show you what to look for when you are play testing a flute. If you don't know anything about playing a flute, then look on YouTube for some beginner videos, and I am not going to do a beginner flute video because I am not an expert at that, and I will leave that to the experts. If there's any leak in a flute pad, the flute has a hard time playing past the leak. Flutes have a lot of adjustments, and if any one of those adjustments is wrong, then the flute will not play like it's supposed to. When you're play testing a flute, if just one note will not play, then probably it's an adjustment problem. And if there are several notes that will not play, it's probably a leak, or it could be an adjustment problem that is causing a leak. There are a few things that can cause leaks in a flute. A pad can be ripped or have a hole in it, and that will cause a leak. Or a pad could not be seating on a tone hole correctly. Instead of sitting flat on a tone hole, it could be off to one side, causing a leak. Or it can be caused by a key that is not adjusted correctly. And occasionally there can be a leak where a solder joint has come loose. Those are the things that you will look out for when you're play testing a flute. The key mechanism may look a little complicated on a flute, but the basics of how it works is pretty simple. You have a tube, and how long the tube is will determine the pitch of the note. You can change the length of where the noise comes out of the flute by which keys you push down. If all the keys are closed, then the sound will come out of the flute at the end. And if you start opening up the keys, then where the sound comes out moves its way up. And in effect, the tube gets shorter and the pitch gets higher. In effect, when you're closing down the keys on the flute in order, it makes the tube longer and longer each time. Because of this, the most important note on a flute is the low C, and that's when all the keys are pushed down. And if you have a flute with a low B foot joint, then the low B is the most important note. When you're playing a low C or a low B on a flute, if there's any leak anywhere, the flute will not play. The only exception being, sometimes if there is an adjustment problem, only one note will not play on a flute, but then when you start pushing on other keys, the keys that you're pushing down can possibly close the key that's causing the problem, so you may not notice the adjustment problem until you play one certain note. But if there's any problem with the pad, then the lowest note on a flute will not play. When a flute player plays the flute, they like to push down very lightly on the keys. Sometimes when you play a flute, if you push down really hard on the keys, you can overcome a problem with adjusting or pad leveling or some other problem, and then it may play for you, but when the flute player comes and gets it, it will not play because they are not going to push down as hard on the flute. So when you play test a flute, use a very light touch. Some people wonder if you need to be a flute player to play test a flute, and the answer is no. I am a trumpet player, and I am not very good at flute, but I can tell if a flute is playing like it's supposed to or not. When I play test a flute, I play a chromatic scale. I start with the on the staff C, and then I go down to the low C. If you play a chromatic scale, then you test every note on the instrument. Usually flutes have a harder time playing in the lower octave than the second or third octave. So you can play test in the second and third octaves also, but the most important octave is the lower octave. This is how I play test a flute. It plays down to the low C chromatically. If it can play the chromatic scale with no problem, then the adjustments are probably good, and also there are probably no leaks in the flute. But another thing I like to try is jumping from the G to the low D, and then from the G to the low C. Sometimes when you play the longer intervals on a flute, some problems can show up that did not show up in the chromatic scale. On this flute, the low C comes out well, at least for me. A good flute player could make it sound a lot better. I am play testing the flute for the mechanics and to see if I fixed it well or not. Another thing that I do, when an advanced player comes in to pick up an instrument, I will ask the player to play the instrument right in the shop and see if there's anything that they want changed on the instrument. Because sometimes there will be a very subtle problem that a really good player can notice that I will not notice, and I want that problem to be found before the instrument leaves the shop. And also, a lot of advanced players want an instrument a certain way, and it may play fine the way it is, but they want it just a little bit different so that it's comfortable for them to play it. And if that's the case, you should know that before they leave the shop too. I hope this video has been helpful. Please subscribe for more band instrument repair videos.